Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I'm Kristin Harmel.
And I'm Ron Block.
And this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories to support indie bookstores, authors, and librarians.
And if you're not with us already, we hope you'll join our Facebook group, which unbelievably is nearly 300,000 members strong. I can't believe it. We'd also like to invite you to follow us on Instagram and YouTube and to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, which is full of awesome bonus content. You can find out more about our community and all we have to offer at friendsandfiction.com.
Now, on this episode, we are so excited to welcome acclaimed author Jane Hamilton to discuss her new novel, The Phoebe Variations, which was just released on September 23rd, just yesterday. Now, Ron, Library Reads actually used your recommendation when The Phoebe Variations landed on their top 10 list for September. In fact, you wrote that it was, quote, an illuminating and lush literary jewel. I love that. Tell us a little bit more about why you loved this book so much.
I will. As a huge fan of Jane Hamilton, it's very exciting when a new one's coming out, and I gobbled this one up. It's such a use of language that just kind of warms your heart, but also it's such an exploration of teenage angst, but on a new level. And it talks about, family that you try to search for, and you search for meaning as you grow up. And it pairs also with the second timeline of when Phoebe is an adult, and it kind of marries the two together. And it's the kind of thing where you just want to hug it when you're done. It's just really a beautifully written novel.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned that to me as soon as you'd finished it. You've been a big fan of this book from the beginning. So I loved it too. I really enjoyed it. So I'm excited that we have Jane here to chat all about it.
I know. My heart's palpitating a little bit, just so you know.
It's going a little pitter patter, huh?
Yeah.
Before we bring Jane on, let's give you a little bit of background about her.
Yes. Jane's novels have won literary prizes, been made into films, and have been international bestsellers. Her novel, The Book of Ruth, was a winner of the PEN/Hemingway Award for First Fiction, and her novel, A Map of the World, was a New York Times Notable Book of the Year and named one of the top 10 books of the year by Entertainment Weekly, Publishers Weekly, the Miami Herald, and People magazine. Not only that, but both The Book of Ruth and Map of the World were selections, two selections on Oprah's Book Club. Also, Jane's nonfiction has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Allure, Elle, and various anthologies. And this, fun fact here, she lives on an apple farm in Wisconsin, and I can't wait to hear about that.
Oh, I know. I'm so excited to ask her about that. What a cool life. So now Jane's new novel, The Phoebe Variations, which is a stunning coming-of-age novel about girls, mothers, and finding one's way in the world, was just released yesterday. Sean, can you bring Jane on?
Hi. Hello.
Okay, may I just say one thing here? Hello, thank you for having me so much. And I am so grateful always to have readers. That's a miracle. But Ron, I would say that probably 92% of my readers are probably women. I mean, that's maybe a fake fact, but that's how
a fact.
And so to have a man, you are a treasure to me. To have a man who is one of my readers just is especially exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. I have learned over the years that I'm not going to just read police procedurals. I learned so much about life and about people and culture and just what's going on in the heart from reading women who are just amazing writers. So it's a mutual admiration.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And Jane, he has really been singing the praises of this book since he read it. So he's a
Oh,
true and genuine fan
oh,
of
I was like,
you and the Phoebe variations.
oh, well, I mean, thank you. And to call it an illuminating and lush literary jewel. I mean, who gets that? People
That's
say to me, it must be so hard to go on tour. I'm like, yeah, it's really hard. People say wonderful things about your work. It's so difficult.
well, Jane, Ron has never described my books as lush or illuminating. So
oh, but hey, I got you a library reads too.
you did get me a library reads. Thank you. I'm just teasing. All
I
right,
know
no,
you are. I know you are.
I don't know about you, Kristin, but it's such a weird process because you're doing it by yourself,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden it's in the world, and the real joy and pleasure and reward is, I mean, I don't mean to sound like Pollyanna, but it's having done the work and being able to do it. And then it starts seeping into the world, and I mean, I just have to, like, when I think, well, why did she get that? I didn't get that. And then I just have to say, back away. You got to
yeah.
write the book. Everything else is gravy. And you get Ron saying illuminating and lush. So what else do you need, really?
Exactly. And Ron reads so many books and has such a great passion for books. And I know this one really stood out to him. So yeah, it is a beautiful thing. We are happy to have you here today. So Jane, the Phoebe Variations is the story of 17-year-old Phoebe, whose life is turned inside out at the end of her high school senior year and in the summer that follows. It is filled with the most fascinating characters, and in a starred review, more words of praise for you, Kirkus calls it a modern fairy tale about motherhood, families of blood and choice, art and altruism, self and circumstance. So that's just a little bit about what this beautiful book is about. Can you tell us a little bit more? And then our favorite question, what is this book really about at its core?
Can I really divulge that? Well, I got inspired to write this book because I went to see Twelfth Night in New York City many years ago. There was a Globe production of Twelfth Night with Mark Rylance in this huge dress, and the line that Olivia says to Viola sort of halfway through is, "What is your parentage?" And that's such a significant question. And I think Freud said something about how when a child realizes that his or her parentage could be called into question, like it might not be as set as she thought, then she starts to fantasize about what could be. But anyway, so that question just reverberated in my mind, and also being in that theater, in that play, in that space was so joyful. And so I wanted to create for myself, not that I was going to recreate Twelfth Night or write an updated version of it, but I just wanted to create even half of the joy for myself, actually, that I experienced in that theater. And it sort of began with that question, what is your parentage?
Ooh.
And what is the book really about at its core? I grew up in Oak Park, Illinois in the 60s and 70s. And in that time, in that suburb, there were, I guess, predominantly the Catholic mommies who had 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 children. On our block, there were 85 kids. Of course, this was before cell phones, so the mommies didn't know where we were. But across the alley, Mrs. Collins had 12 boys, and then on our side, there was a family that had 11 girls. And I just have been kind of obsessed through the years about those mothers and how they, like, when their eyes first opened in the morning, did they think, oh, God damn it. Oh, I have to get up. How am I going to get up? But, they had to, and feeding, clothing, shodding, finding the library books under the bed. I just marvel at them. And so I wanted to be in that world of the 70s with those mothers and different kinds of mothers, because the world was really turning at that point. The feminist revolution had begun.
Yeah.
So there were old-fashioned mommies, there were newfangled mommies, and so it was really interesting to look at those mothers through the lens of these high school girls.
Yeah.
And what do they think about their future and marriage and sex and all that stuff. But I also, this sounds like maybe a stretch, but I was interested in exploring, um, well, first of all, that sort of glorious, short-lived time when teenage girls sometimes have really intense, powerful friendships.
Yes.
And it's, it's not necessarily sexual. Often it isn't, but it's intimate and you can be your best self
Yeah.
and you have a lack of self-consciousness and it feels very pure.
Mhm.
But then later, sometimes you reflect on the power structure of that friendship and it doesn't seem so great. And so in this book, I was really not, I mean, I wasn't writing about a political situation that might seem true or not to any of us, but like a power structure where you really don't have any power
Mm.
and you've got this forceful person. And do you resist? Do you go along? Do you, what's which is really a stretch because this is a coming of age book, but I was thinking of power dynamics as they relate to beyond a high school friendship.
Ooh,
No,
I like
John,
that.
that's very well said and
Yeah.
spot on. So you talked about the friendship a little bit, and I want to maybe dive into that a little bit more because there's also the class difference in them. But
Mhm, mhm.
tell us a little bit more about Luna and her dynamic with Phoebe, who Anne Hood actually called brilliant, mixed up, loyal, and lovely, which is a perfect description. Perfect.
Well, it took me a long time to bring Luna into focus, and this book went through many, many actually different versions. I worked on it on and off for 10 years. So Luna was the most
Whoa.
difficult piece for me. I just would say that for a while I had a Phoebe living in New York City at the Dakota, being a personal assistant to a couple very like Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira.
Oh,
And there was just, and sometimes, and Kristen, you probably experienced this, like you realize that you really have to kind of put Spanx on the book and shrink it to
I love
find
that.
to find the
That's perfect.
focus. And so Luna, I just needed, I always had the beginning where Phoebe goes to meet her birth parents, which is very traumatic, but I needed
Oof.
Luna to be kind of her guide and a powerful person, not only because she's, Phoebe's south of the tracks, Luna's way north of the tracks, so she
Mhm.
has a pedigree and she's going to go to Yale. Her father went to Yale, and they're both. This was something that really interested me. I don't know about you, but I read many books by young women, and the sex in it is so terrible. It's not enjoyable. It's it's painful. It's traumatic. It's kind of, my son says I shouldn't use this word, but it's icky. And I just wanted to write about girls that were sort of seemingly good. These girls are A students. They don't drink. They don't smoke. They don't have sex. They're just really good. But even if
Yeah.
you're good, you still have glitches in your personality.
Mm.
You can't be glitch free no matter what. So I wanted to write about good girls and but who make kind of wonky decisions nonetheless.
Ooh, I like that.
Mhm.
And being that it's a coming of age story, I think that makes complete sense. Phoebe's really reevaluating who she is and where she fits with all sort of, with this exposure to her birth family and all of that. I found it really
Yeah.
fascinating that later in the book, we see more of the perspective of the modern day Phoebe, looking back at this period in her life where everything changed. And yet, in the retelling of it all, she still seems to have very mixed feelings about Luna. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you have her still wrestling in a lot of ways with her feelings about Luna all these years later?
Well, Phoebe didn't have lots and lots of friends. I mean, Luna was very special to her, and they had such a deep bond. And their love is complex. And also, Luna is a public figure now. And it's one thing to have a friend who, kind of disappears from your life and you don't really know what happened. But Luna is present. She goes to YouTube. There's Luna. She turns on the radio. There's Luna. She goes into a bookstore. There's Luna. She cannot escape Luna. And then, there's a couple of occasions when she opens Luna's book in the bookstore and she sees herself on the page, not named as herself, but Luna is recounting an incident. And so, she can't not think about her. And so she's very present in her life. And even though they haven't spoken for decades, she comes to the realization that they actually do have an ongoing relationship that is in the present. And also, I mean, I don't want to do a spoiler, but Luna does do something for Phoebe during this time of crisis that nobody else does. And that is deeply meaningful to her. So, love is complicated. I have a college friend who, in about, the 10 years after college, used to send me postcards that would say, "Dear Ham, life is mixed. Love, M." That was always the message. And for Phoebe, her relationship with Luna is mixed. And, as I remember it, I haven't read it in a while, actually. I should probably read it again. But I should probably look at it. But, you know how it is. You've read it so many times. It's pretty much in you. But I think she thinks, she has a moment where she thinks, if we did meet, what, so, and, she herself has a surprising experience that she does not want to share with Luna at the time. And there would just be so much life to cover. And they're old enough now so that it's sort of like,
that's wonderful. I love that lifelong bond, even though they're not in each other's lives. It was just such a wonderful part of the story. But speaking of Phoebe and relationships, let's talk about Phoebe's relationship with her mother, Greta. Phoebe, as we know, is adopted. And one of the things that really kicks the story off is a visit to her birth family, the Dahlgrens, where she sees all of these biological sisters who the parents kept while they gave her away. It really rocks her to the core. And it seems like most of all, she blames Greta, her adoptive mother. Can you talk a bit about the storyline and how both the Dahlgrens and her adoptive mother shape her life?
Well, again, what is your parentage? And when you start delving into that, it can lead you down rabbit holes that may or may not be comforting, satisfactory, illuminating. But, and as I said earlier, I think I said, Phoebe actually doesn't have parents because she knows just enough about them. Christmas cards come every year with pictures of the family, and something in her knows I'm not going to examine these pictures. I'm not even going to look. And she, instead of having the fantasy about the birth parents, she really claims her mother, who is, in Oak Park at that time, in real life. I don't call, the town in this book Oak Park. I call it Forest. But I do think of it as Oak Park. And the reason I call it Forest is if you call it by the real name, then people say, well, you didn't put the library in. And that's not how the library looks. So that just, But anyway, Greta at that time, well, in that time in Oak Park, real Oak Park, even a single mother with a child was really unusual. I had one friend in high school, which had, 5,000 kids at that time. And she had a single mother. And I think that's the only person I knew. So Greta is not only a single mother, but at that point, she's a closeted lesbian. And so she's really, and she's an activist. She works for the Fair Housing Project in Hyde Park. She's really out there. And I think Phoebe at a certain level is proud of her, but she's, her activism in Phoebe's view gets in the way of the kind of maternal love that Phoebe would prefer. And then, of course,
Yeah.
when she meets her biological mother, who embraces her, and she's got this, long, wiry, hippie hair and this big bosom, and it's like, that is not acceptable. So, which I think is another reason for, Phoebe having such a strong bond with a powerful girl who, this is a stretch and I hardly want to articulate it, but, she is kind of a parental figure in a certain way, although Phoebe wouldn't think of her that way, but she's love, she's good guidance. And, so, so Greta, and also she's a teenager. What teenager likes her mother, period?
Correct.
Very true.
So,
You sorry?
no, the end. Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to say, I would love to also talk about writing the huge and fabulous O'Connor family.
Mm-hmm.
So Phoebe and Luna are best friends with Patrick O'Connor. So when Phoebe flees her home and needs somewhere to go, Patrick's home, which is just full of chaos, is a place where she can escape, at least for a little while. But you take on a big challenge with these O'Connors as a writer. So in order for the story to work, all these boys, Miles, Chummy, Kelly, Patrick, have to feel very distinct from each other on the page. Can you talk a little bit more about the inspiration for the family? I'm guessing it had a little bit to do with the family across the street or some of these big families when you were growing up.
There were,
yeah.
Well, there were so many big families, as I said, and it's interesting, though, however, that there was a house in my high school years where many of us, we were all drama geeks and we spent a lot of time, and there was a big family. It was very chaotic, and it was not unlike the house that I call the asylum. And, I have kind of been obsessed is too strong a word, but I think about that house a lot. And recently I went to the funeral of a friend's mother. The mother was 96, Oak Park family. The mother had 7 children in 8 years, a set of twins. But anyway, I said to Erin, the daughter, I said, Erin, did your parents drink? And I'm not going to replicate the volume at which she responded, but she said, oh my God, yes. So anyway, that's just a slight digression. But the night before the funeral, there were many of us from high school who were gathered at the bar, and we talked long into the night, and that house kept coming up as a subject. Wow. This was a couple months ago, so this book was already in the can. But and I thought, oh, it's not just me who just has very powerful memories of this house. So the house, is as important as a character, and making those boys distinct. You say that it's difficult, and sometimes it is, but for me, I don't know, they came sort of fully cooked.
Yep.
4 of them. If I had to do 12, that would have really been difficult, but they are all quite different with their different talents and physiques, because there's so many of them that some of them look like the mother's side, some of them look like the father's side, and the A group, the B group, that's how Phoebe talks about them. So there was that. They have different fashion statements, different talents. So I wish that I could say it was so difficult, but I nailed it. But really, it wasn't hard at all.
I love that. Yeah, the asylum was just such a big part of the story for me.
Yeah.
It was I love hearing about how they all came to be in the history of them.
Well, and also, when I was trying to shrink the book back from the Dakota in New York City, I just thought, no, the asylum is really where the action is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I had long stretches without Luna. And I realized that she had to kind of be in every frame in a certain way, even when she was absent, because that's where the tension is. And, you think you should know these things after writing a bunch of books, but really every book is so different and has different challenges. And I remember at one point my agent said to me, you're taking so long to do these books, and really, like, you should be able to figure this out. And I just write an outline or something. And I'm like, that's not how this works. I wish it was. She said, this isn't good for you. And I said, I know, I'm aware of that, but I can't. It's an inefficient process. And it just took me a long time to figure out who had to be in the frame.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you just started to touch on it, but I wanted to ask a little bit about process, because a lot of our viewers are they love that to hear that, but there's also several aspiring writers, so they always love to hear about that, especially in this story where everything's really so complex and character driven. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you put together a story like this?
Well, let's see, Ron, if I can remember. First of all, a friend of mine who read an early copy said, Jane, this is such a brave book. I said, what are you talking about? It's not brave. It's an old-fashioned coming-of-age story. And she said, that's what I mean. It's old-fashioned. That's really brave to do. So did I set out to write an old-fashioned book? Not really. I just wanted to tell this particular story. But I write lots of drafts. It's very important to me. Well, for me, the first draft is really not very pleasant, because
Right.
you just don't know if it's going to work out at all. And so I start, typing, and then I get in, I do the first chapter, and then I go back and I write the first chapter a billion times, because that first chapter has to really hold everything that's going to follow in a certain way.
Yeah.
And so then I keep writing into the book and going further. But then I don't know, I try to tell this to students that I've had. You've got to print. And then you put your printed page here on your little stand thingy, and then you start typing your words over. And your brains actually are in your hands. And you
That's
have to
so
type
cool.
your own words. And then you read your own words out loud in a room, not in a whisper, but out loud, and you hear your words. So that's what I do. And it takes a long time, but sometimes there's novels that I've written that just sort of feel like they come out on one breath. And that is like, lots of drafts, but still the form is there, and you get to the end and you think, okay, I've got this. But other times, it's really a struggle to find the form, and it's like you have to pay for the easy ones. And this was one of those that I had to pay to really find the form, as I said. But on the other hand, I really loved being with these characters and seeing them evolve. And so I really enjoyed being with them. And, the Phoebe as an adult part that sort of came later, and the way, it folds in. And there's a moment near the end where Phoebe has an extremely powerful kind of lifetime highlight with her son. And that came to me very late, like last spring, when I was doing like some of the final edits. But I kept listening to the Bach double piano concerto, which is so beautiful. And I just thought, I got to get this in there. And then, you have this whole thing. And so then there's a problem of, where do I put this so that it seems all of a piece? So that can be a problem too. But I think in the end, if you've worked on the book for a long time, and then you go to Paris and you check that everything is accurate, you just kind of can't do any more. And I have to say, with this book, I had an editor, Corey Hunter, who I think knew the book maybe even better than I know it. She just had absorbed it. And that's such a privilege to have, to be in sync with somebody else and have this communication. And she'd say things like, Jane, there's this sentence on page 174, and I think it would be better on page 32. Like,
oh, wow.
oh my gosh. So anyway, so all of that, it was a whole process.
That's awesome.
What a journey to getting it to this place. That's incredible.
And I can't believe you said, go ahead.
I'd like to say one last thing, which is I wrote so many versions of this that failed, that at a certain point, I just thought, this book is never going to be published. I'm never going to have a publishing life again. and I went through all the stages of grief. And then I just thought, if I can't make a book about a girl
Yeah.
who runs away and lives in the basement of a house with 14 children work, then I'm really done. So I'm just going to make this the best failure that I can. And I just kept writing it, but I was free because I don't know, Kristin, if you've had this experience, but publishing is very hard right now.
It
And the big five publishers, they want certain things. And, people would say to me, well, could you make it more like this? Can you make it more about that? And I think, well, no, that's not what the book is. So anyway, I was finally freed to just make the book what I wanted it to be.
I love that. I love that. That feeds right into a follow-up question I have, which is, what kept you driven through all this? This is like, a lot of people would just say, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm not going to go there. But something must have been in you that made you keep going back to the page.
Well, I was also sort of working on other things, through the 10 years. But then, I've written some failures where it's just like, no, I can't, that's over. I learned what I needed to do to get from it. And writing that failure led me to the next thing. And I've always known that, writing the one thing leads to the next because your mind is spinning that way. But I just kept thinking, this has to work. There's something here that I'm not understanding that needs to happen. And I'm going to take another stab at it. There's a set piece kind of thing in the middle that takes place in this men's only bar. And a lot of people who read it said, you got to take that out.
No.
And I was like, I am not taking that out. But again, I had to make it relate to Luna in a way that I hadn't figured out. So anyway, I think about editors and agents who not only read a billion books, but like my agent at the time, I think read 10 versions of this. And like,
Wow.
I just like, thank you for doing that. I'm so grateful. And thank you for saving me from myself, which is what my business associates have done. But also, oh my God, how can you just keep reading the same failure again and again? I don't think I could do it. But then it came into shape.
Yes,
I feel like we're
the scene in the bar. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like we're our own worst critics, especially when we get to that point in the novel where we've done so many drafts and we're like, we know it's almost there, but it's not quite working. Like, it's just hard to see it with perspective until you've stepped away.
It is. And it's even, after it's been published. I mean, I did an event recently, pre-pub event, and I was reading, a section from it, and I was like, wait, I didn't even, what is that word? What, wait, what, why did,
where'd that come from?
What, wait, that doesn't make sense. And so it's like, oh, well, too late.
Yeah, you can't worry about it anymore. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we mentioned when we were reading your bio, we mentioned the Book of Ruth, we mentioned A Map of the World. These are both huge successes, Oprah's book club picks. You've been writing for a long time now about very complex family dynamics. Can you talk to us a bit about how you think you've grown as a writer over the nearly 40 years since the publication of your first novel? Are there ways in which you challenge yourself anew with each book to keep growing?
Kristin, that is a very hard question. And I'm not sure I'm even the best person to answer it because what do I really know about my work? And I do know, like, I go back and read the early books and again, I just think even more hysterically, wow. But
same. Oh my gosh, even a book or two ago, I'm like, wow, I didn't like that.
Like I wrote A Map of the World and I don't know, I think I must have started it in maybe 1990. And it's like, I had no idea that I was actually writing sort of about my own marriage until I read it maybe 15 years later. Anyway, well, my goal is to keep writing until because it's the way, because I don't know what else to do with myself. But how have the books evolved? I mean, several of them do concern the mommies of Oak Park. Several of them are coming of age stories. And I'm still interested in one of my books, The Excellent Lombards, concerns an apple orchard, not my apple orchard. It's fiction, of course. But I'm still interested in exploring that world. So I can't really answer that question. I just know, I mean, I feel very limited. I'm not going to write a dystopian novel. I'm not going to write a picture book. So what I feel now as a 68-year-old is the challenge of writing a younger person who, lives in a very, very different world than I did when I grew up and even now. So, but I'm still interested in the mystery of personality. As Flannery O'Connor said, the aim of fiction is probing the mystery of personality. And I am not interested in using AI. I know that I should be interested in the effect it's having on all of us, but I don't want to read a novel or write a novel with AI. So there's certain things that I don't wish to do or know that I probably would fail at.
Well, and I think that's good. I think as soon as writers like us start relying on that to craft our stories, it's the beginning of the end of literature.
I just want to say, I'd like to just say that, though, I feel like you have so much more to say in that area that you write. There's so many characters. And like, I think back to Short History of a Prince. Oh my God, what an effective novel that was. And I feel like you've got so much more to say. So let's stay there.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Well, I have 2 granddaughters now, so maybe they will teach me. They would, I mean, they absolutely do teach me. Like, Janie, you're old. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes. That's good information.
my 9-year-old son makes sure I'm aware of that in my daily life. Mom is old. It is true. So, Jane, if you would stick around, we have more to talk to you about. But first, a few quick reminders for our listeners and viewers out there.
Yes. For all of you watching and listening, we encourage you to rush out and buy your copies of the Phoebe Variations. The perfect place to do that is in the Friends and Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll not only be getting it at a discount, but all of your purchases there support our show, our guests, and independent indie bookstores nationwide.
And don't forget to visit friendsandfiction.com for details on our show schedule, upcoming in-person events, and links to our merch store, our Substack newsletter sign-up, and the award-winning Friends and Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa. In case you missed it, Brenda and Lisa just hosted Regina Black on September 15th to discuss her new novel, August Lane.
Yes. And speaking of our Substack, you can read all our free weekly posts on the Substack website or app, or subscribe for free to get them directly in your inbox. And if you upgrade to our paid Substack, and why haven't you, which costs just $5 a month, you'll have access to deeper dives with all of our weekly show guests like Jane, plus monthly roundtable discussions like the 2 recent ones that Meg did on crime fiction and debut novels. And the debut novels one is so good. Plus bonus Q&As with additional authors like the recent one we ran with David Roboleski, Daniel Kraus, Christine Pride, and Joe Piazza. If you enjoy tuning in for our weekly author interviews, this is a big way you can support us for about $1 a week. Check us out at friendsandfiction.substack.com.
All right, now back to you, Jane. So knowing that you live on an apple farm, I'm very curious about your writing space and your daily routine. So are you doing work around the apple farm? Where do you write? Can you kind of talk us through a typical day and maybe tell us how you feel your own setting feeds you as a novelist?
Yeah, oh, yes. I feel really lucky to have lived here for all of my adult life. I'm in this little town in Wisconsin. And when I first moved here and met the man of my dreams and then got married, I was intending to go to New York, but I ended up here on this orchard. And it was really important for me as a young writer to just be in my own bubble, actually. And I didn't get the New York Times Book Review. And I just sort of I had gotten rejected from all the graduate programs I applied to. And so I just worked at the forums myself, and I was free, and it was before email. So really I was free. So, so that's been really important. And I just feel grateful to have a daily connection to the natural world. I worked, in the first years that I was here on the orchard full time, and then I had children, and then I was able to get published. So I still go to the farmer's market in Madison with my husband and do kind of behind the scenes things, but I'm not out picking apples every single day. So that it would be a lie to say that I did that. But I do feel I'm very involved and as a support person.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. I love that. So, Jane, where can we catch up with you on the road? And will you tell our community how to connect with you online?
Well, I have a Facebook page. I believe it's just Jane Hamilton. I have an Instagram account, which my daughter manages. Thank you, Hannah. Which is Jane Hamilton Writer, one word.
Okay.
And I have a website in progress that isn't quite finished yet. Thank you, my son. And there should be a tour schedule at some point on those sites, and also at the Zibby Media sites, both on Facebook and on Instagram.
Right. Great. And I think I saw that you're going to be at the Aspen Literary Festival.
Yes.
Yes. That's going to be so fun.
Yes.
Our own Patti, Callahan Henry, is going to be there as well.
That will be really fun. And I'm doing a panel with Jess Walter on, I think the subject, I looked at the subject, it's like ambition, scope, and the modern novel, which did make me giggle a little bit, because why us? Why me? But on that particular topic, but I think he's such a nice guy, and his books are wonderful. So that'll be fun.
I agree with you. He's also one of my favorites. Wish I could be there.
You should go, Ron.
Well, believe it or not, I'm going to be 2 hours away. I'm ordained, and my godson is getting married, so I am going to be officiating his wedding at the bottom of the mountains while you're all at the Aspen Literary Festival.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's great.
That is wonderful. Oh my goodness. Well, Jane, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much for having me and for your enthusiasm. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the Friends in Fiction show.
So happy.
For all of you out there, be sure to tune in next week when Kristy and Mary Kay will open our fall 2025 season by welcoming Megan Church to discuss her new novel, The Mad Wife. That show will air on the Friends in Fiction Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, October 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it'll be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, October 3rd.
And thanks to all of you out there for being with us for this episode and every other episode that you join us for. We will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.